So this was an idea brewing in the back of my mind for a while, but I didn't act on it until now. So, gacha games. I've had a lot of history with them. We obviously know I play Genshin, but there were others in the past like Honkai Impact 3rd, Food Fantasy, and probably more I don't remember. The appeal of those games is all of the lovely characters you can pull for. Now, I have a lot of muses. Some we know, some are stuck in the basement. So if I were to make a hypothetical gacha game with almost every single muse I've created, how would they look? Well, that's what we're finding out today in this video. Alright, so I think it would be more fun if we did the roles live. Kinda. So as you can see here, there are a lot of names. Some names you're going to recognize, some names you aren't. If you can even see the names, of course. So I divided my characters into 3 categories. So you have the 5 stars, which I marked in gold. They're going to be the hardest to get. Next are the 4 stars, which I marked in purple. Slightly easier to get than the 5 stars, but I think they're still going to be a bit difficult. Then finally you have the 3 stars, which I marked in blue. We're probably going to end up with at least one of them. So I'm only going to draw 5 characters, so that means 5 roles. Mainly because I don't think my sanity can handle that. So, with that out of the way, let's do the first role. Oh? 5-star, huh? And it's her. As you guys saw, the first character I had to draw was Vidinea. If you've watched my other videos, you'd know she was featured on an episode of Drawing Muses I Don't Normally Draw. Now, some might be wondering my criteria for giving certain muses the 5-star ranking, and it was a combination of vibes, how strong they'd be, and just how well people know them. But I guess mostly vibes. She gave me 5-star vibes, so I made her one. Now, in order to come up with a gacha game design for her, I had to figure out the lore of the hypothetical gacha game. It's pretty generic and bare bones, but essentially there are 4 realms or kingdoms. Alyris, which is a kingdom in the sky, Akranos, which is a kingdom in the underworld, Serais, which is a kingdom in the sea, and then just the mortal realm. I think it's obvious that Vidinea comes from Alyris. The people in Alyris are these winged humans. I'd say they're like angels, but not actually. General motif and aesthetics in this kingdom is feathers and bird stuff. So some other stuff about the world of this hypothetical gacha game. Nin, who is my VTuber persona, is a minor deity, but she would be this game's god. She created this and many other worlds, but this hypothetical game, we're focusing on this world. She created a couple of things and then watched as her creations made up their own kingdoms and stuff. Yeah, I actually did some thinking for this video. It's wild, I know. So I'll talk about Alyris's lore briefly and what I had thought about. So they're ruled by Sarah's family, and I'd say they're very advanced and organized up there. I meant for it to seem like a utopia of sorts, but there are probably a lot of underlying issues since it's very strict there. There's probably a lot of mystery surrounding Sarah's family, and especially Sarah himself since he keeps his face hidden. I can probably talk about more one day, but I'll leave it at that for now since I'm sure we're all more interested to hear about how Vidinea functions with the setting as well as my design choices. In this game, Vidinea is just an ordinary civilian in Alyris. There's nothing too crazy about her. But I'd imagine she and Ayasaki are kind of famous as a performance duo. In a normal universe, these two are figure skating partners, but I haven't worked out too much of the logic in this game. Though likely they'd be doing something similar to that. Obviously, Vidinea gets to keep her eagle in here because I said so. He probably assists with performances a bit somehow. Maybe for effect? I don't know. It's pretty bare bones lore, but it's not like I'm making an actual game, so I think it's okay if I don't think about things too deeply. I already had an idea for how I wanted Vidinea's design to look, so I'd say this was really easy for me to do. With Alyris, I wanted to have things look ethereal and be all flowy. I imagine all of the people up there would be wearing something similar to what Vidinea is wearing. There is a lot of whites, blues, and gold in the outfits. It's sort of to make them look pure, and with Alyris, I think it's fitting. Like I said earlier, These winged humans aren't angels, but there are a lot of similarities. They can manipulate some of the elements if they try hard enough, and they obviously can fly with their wings. Now, speaking of their wings, you can't see this in Vidinea's art, but I imagine the clothes they wear are like either backless or have a large cutout for their wings. You know, for practicality reasons. Like Vidinea's dress probably has a large cutout for where her wings are. The clothing is very light, and I wouldn't say you're the most covered up. Definitely wouldn't be good to fight in these clothes, and really, it's meant to make you look pretty. But I think for the most part, the people in Alaris have no reason to worry about protection since surely the royal family and their guards will do that for them. Also, there aren't many threats up in the sky here, so I think this kind of fashion makes sense. I think I've explained enough lore and talked about my design choices. I can probably talk about other things. Since Vidinea is a 5-star in this hypothetical game, I wanted her art to feel like it. So I went ahead and added like a lot of things in the background. It did prove to be a little annoying to color and deal with, but I think it's worth it. I think without the feathers I threw around and then the cloud shapes in the background, this wouldn't hit the same. Or maybe some might say it'd still be good because her design seems extravagant enough. I wouldn't know for sure. I thought about doing like rendering effects and maybe a whole background, but I don't think my sanity could handle that. So I guess we're going to roll with a transparent background and minimal rendering, which I think is fine. I imagine this is the art that shows up when you get the characters anyways. I think it's called splash art. I might be completely wrong, but that's fine. Anyways, I think the speed paint is finishing up, so I'll give you guys a better look at her art. So here is the final art. I think she looks good, and this is probably my favorite design. Even though this took me a bit, I'd still say this gave me the least amount of trouble, unlike some of the other characters, and you guys will probably see what I mean soon. Alright, next roll. That'd be so funny if we got her brother, but we'll have to see. Okay. The next character I had to draw was Chaewon, which is a 4-star in this hypothetical game. I didn't want too many 5-star characters, but she would be strong enough, so 4-star it is. There is also the fact that I used to do stuff with her and some of the other people she's connected to frequently, so some of my friends may know her. Now, for the lore stuff. I decided to make Chaewon from Seirais for one reason. In a fantasy AU, one of her brothers is a Selkie. If you don't know what a Selkie is, they're these people who can turn into seals via a code. That's about the gist of it. There's obviously a lot more, but if people are interested, they can search it up for themselves. So anyways, this meant that I'd make Chaewon a Selkie. There are many interpretations of a Selkie, but I pretty much just added my own things and ideas for this game. She has her coat which allows her to transform into a seal, obviously, but I imagine she can emit ultrasonic waves to locate people. Since she's from Seirais, she can breathe underwater. I know seals can't breathe underwater, but sometimes the logic is different in games, I guess. I'll briefly talk about Seirais and what it's like. I think out of all of the areas, Seirais is probably the best in terms of rulers. So I have this muse named Siwoo, and his family rules Seirais. Since it's an underwater kingdom, it's probably exactly what you expect. You have all sorts of sea creatures in there like Selkies, mermaids, sea animal hybrids, monsters, and probably a lot more. So it's quite diverse. Unlike Alaris, I feel like Seirais is not as strict with its rules, and there's definitely a lot more freedom. Most people are genuinely happy there, but I think the one restriction quite literally anyone from Seirais has is reliance on the sea. I guess you can't be completely perfect with your life. Now, I'm sure some would be wondering about if you can visit Seirais as someone who can't breathe underwater. You can. There are designated spaces for people who can't breathe underwater to traverse around in, and I wouldn't be surprised if they also had their own technology to accommodate those people. Overall, probably the best kingdom, and they're the most unproblematic. Despite all of the good things I said about Seirais, Chaewon herself is living quite the miserable life because of her circumstances. In this game, I decided to make her an assassin of sorts. One of her brothers is a gambler and she is an assassin. That is how those two are living. Let's just say they grew up in an extremely rough environment because their parents kept making poor decisions and the kids are just dragged into this mess. In order to escape their parents, these two had to pretty much scramble for money and then just get out as soon as they could. Though life hasn't been too easy for them since, due to their situation, there aren't many good opportunities for them. So the life of crime it is. Now, I did feel like making a change to their lore, and it applies for the normal universe too. Originally, it was just Chaewon and like one older brother. Now it's Chaewon and having older twin brothers. If I ever do another video like this and I get one of the brothers, maybe I'll talk more about it. But I'll be focusing on Chaewon since she is the one I pulled for this video. Since she's a Selkie, I had to include her coat in her design. I like to imagine each Selkie's coat manifests in a unique way, so this is how Chaewon's coat appears. But that doesn't mean the other Selkie's coats look the same as hers. I knew I needed Chaewon's design to look practical, like she could genuinely be an assassin. So I gave her gloves, some knee pads, and pants. Yes, she probably swims in this, just deal with it. I've seen designs of female assassins looking all seductive and showing a lot of skin, but I really don't think that fit Chaewon. Her character is more rough, a bit brutish, low-key a tomboy, but I don't know if I'd consider her one. Definitely would not be caught dead wearing a dress. I think she's a fun character and maybe I should bring her out more to do stuff with. Anyways, the speed paint should be ending soon, so I'll show the final art. Here is the final art. It's not as crazy as BD since Chaewon is a 4-star in this, but I still wanted it to be a little special. I love how her design turned out, and maybe if I get the will, I should just draw her with a specific design in an illustration one day. Next roll. Oh, another 5-star. Okay. So I really didn't expect to get another 5-star because I had adjusted the weights of each name to reflect the character's rarity. I believe the weight I set for Yoseng was 0.144, and that goes for the other 5 stars too. I didn't count how many 5 stars I assigned, but I think the chance of me getting like 2 was slim, yet here we are. Now, where is this energy in my other gacha games, huh? Where is my double 5-star, or like, whatever the highest rarity? Jokes aside, Yoseng was difficult to figure out. I'd say he's the second most difficult actually. I had no direction for him like Virinea. Then with Chaewon, she had a thing that pretty much gave me the direction of her design. Her being a Selkie actually helped. But with Yoseng, I intended for him to be in the mortal human realm. So that left things very vague and broad, so I had to come up with something. Now, we might be wondering what the lore for the human realm is. There's not much, so don't have high expectations. The humans have their own separate kingdoms and divided themselves further. I thought about the humans the least out of all the realms because what did we expect? They're just humans. But I will say that in this world, some humans can do magic stuff. Some can manipulate the elements, others can do weird stuff. Yoseng is one of those humans who can do weird things. So I imagine that he has these puppets that he manipulates. He controls them using his hands. The puppets were probably creepy, haunted things, and he just found them and was like, yep, these are mine now. So the thing you need to know about Yoseng is that he has this fascination with anything horror related. He's like very interested in that stuff. Some people would probably think he's crazy, but just let the man enjoy his horror things. Don't worry, he wouldn't actually harm others. He's a very cheerful person who deeply cares for others. Just, he has this morbid curiosity for things. Yoseng has a twin brother named Yorum, and the two have a very interesting relationship. Let's just say Yorum isn't the best person, but Yorum has his own set of issues that I won't be talking about in this video unless he somehow becomes relevant in a future video. Alright, so I'll talk about some of my design choices with Yoseng because that's what we're here for. To say I struggled on the clothes was an understatement. Yoseng didn't really have anything that I could lean on for the direction as I said earlier. I think the only thing I really knew was that the aesthetics reflected more ancient times, but I can't really say it's ancient times because we have some technology purely for convenience. Yeah, there are a lot of plot holes and things that don't make too much sense with this universe, but that's because I didn't think that deeply on it. Can't be wasting my brain cells now since we all know I barely have any. I was kind of winging Yoseng's clothes. I put him in somewhat flowy clothing because, vibes. So for the rest of his design, I think that aside from that coat top thingy he wears, it's probably a little ragged. Yorum and him aren't exactly wealthy, so it makes no sense for him to have extremely nice clothing. For his coat thingy, I think he only managed to get it after saving up. Or, you know what would be better? Maybe one of his puppets found it abandoned somewhere, and the reason why it was abandoned was because the original owner thought it was a cursed garment. So Yoseng just casually takes it instead, and he's kinda fine, guys. Maybe except for some parts of his backstory, but we don't talk about that. I know you guys are only seeing the line art right now in the video, but I'll talk about colors anyways. I mean, you'll eventually see it in the flat color section of the speed paint, so it's fine to just yap about it. So with the colors, it was just another moment of I had no idea what direction to take this. I didn't know if I wanted to dress him in darker clothing or make it colorful. Like, Yoseng's personality, if we ignored his fascination with horror stuff, kind of lends itself to brighter colors. For a lot of my more cheerful characters, I tend to put them in colorful clothes because it fits their personality. Yoseng is a little complicated because I needed to take into account his backstory and also that part of his personality where he likes horror things. So that doesn't mean he's going to be the stereotypical colorful sunshine. In the end, I decided to dress him in darker clothes, aside from his coat. I guess him not having too many colorful outfits also makes sense for his financial situation, because colorful clothing would be expensive. If you're poor, you don't get access to that. Now, I'll talk about his coat even though you guys probably don't see the colors for it yet. I could have made it like a darker shade of gray or something, but I actually decided to make it white with red tips. I think I saw somewhere that white represents death in ancient Asia, but listen, I might be wrong. But I think you guys can sort of see my intention, right? Basically, Yoseng just has a lot of fascination with the dead, the creepy stuff, and the haunted crap. So why not somewhat reflect that in his design, right? I think what he does in this game is just being an exorcist. I think it makes the most sense given his fascination with the spirits and haunted stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he has unconventional methods for taking care of this stuff. Somehow it works. He definitely doesn't make a lot of money from this because he doesn't understand how to price his services, but also, I'm sure people are really unsettled by his behavior. Like to them, he's a crazy guy who likes the haunted stuff. Oh, and not to mention his puppet that he insists on taking everywhere because they're his friends. Those puppets are actually alive, but nobody believes him. Now, I'm describing Yoseng in this way, and we're probably all wondering if he has actual friends. Yes, he does in fact have actual friends outside of his puppets. They've just grown to tolerate this side of him. Now, there's a lot of darker truths to Yoseng and the reason why he's the way he is, but I said I won't get into that. Anyways, I'm sure the speed paint is finishing up soon, so I'll show the final art. Here is the final art for Yoseng. I think this is my second favorite design. I think him and Yorum have a lot of potential, so I should consider exploring those two and their lore a bit more one day. Next one. Oh my god, my luck is crazy. So I got another 5-star, so that makes 3 5-star characters for this video. My luck was really good and I was surprised I didn't get a 3-star yet. I wasn't going to complain though because that meant I got to pop off with an illustration. Now, I decided that Soyeon was going to be from Akranos. For this video, I was hoping to get one character that fit the vibes of every realm within 5 pulls, and I got what I asked for. So I mentioned much earlier in the video that Akranos was in the underworld for this. It's what you'd expect. A lot of demons, grim reapers, hellhounds, all of that. I wouldn't say Akranos is like a bad afterlife though. I see it more as a place where people live, but they all have their assigned duties to deal with those spirits. Demons make up majority of the population in Akranos. I haven't thought much about some of the specifics, but I do know that Akranos is more outwardly dystopian than Aelyris is. I think Aelyris, while it presents itself as a utopia, it's somewhat dystopian in some regards. Akranos, you know damn well it's kind of dystopian, especially if you're at the very bottom. So, Akranos is ruled by Yongsing's family. Yeah, no matter what, we can't avoid Yongsing. Given what I usually do for him in fantasy AUs, it just makes sense. I will say that Aelyris and Akranos have a lot of tension. Like the two places had a long war with each other, and while there is peace between them for now, I think it's likely another war could happen one day. But I think that's enough about Akranos lore. Let's talk about Soyeon. I decided to make her a demon in this, so she gets to have horns. I debated on giving her obvious wings, but decided that demons use weird magic to fly. If they appear to have wings, that's just because they use magic to make it appear that way for cosmetic reasons, though the horns are legitimate. I felt like I should make Soyeon like a guard for the king of Akranos, which is not Yongsang himself. It's still his father. Yongsang himself is just the crown prince. So since Soyeon is a guard, it makes sense to throw her in armor. The only problem is that I've never drawn armor in my life and didn't know what I was doing. I made something up, but I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it could be better, but it works for now. Soyeon herself is someone who is pretty brutish and less tactful. Definitely is great at fighting people, but she's reckless, unlike her half-brother who is more calculated. I definitely could not see her wearing anything that looks all pretty, so just like Chaewon, I settled for making her design more practical. I did get to draw her signature sword, and it looks pretty unrealistic, but it's fantasy, so we can have fun with it. I think I could have done better, but maybe in the future, I'll revisit this when I actually know how to draw good armor. You'll probably see me starting to do the flat colors soon in the speed paint. When I tell you that it was also difficult to figure out the colors, I wasn't kidding. I was sort of restricted to only a couple of colors for the armor. I didn't think I can make anything too crazy. The rest of the colors aren't anything crazy. I think deep down, I wanted to do more, but didn't think it'd look right if I did a lot. Obviously, it was a skill issue with myself, so that just means I need to get better. Still though, even if this one wasn't my favorite design, I'm proud of the fact that I managed to kind of draw armor. Though next time, I should probably reconsider the direction I take the muses design before I suffer. Then again, sometimes muses just fit something a lot better, so you gotta deal with the hard stuff. But hey, I survived doing this drawing, so that's what matters. Shading this was a nightmare purely because of the armor. But I breathed the biggest sigh of relief when the armor was done and I could speedrun doing everything else. This one was my most difficult design purely because of the armor. I guess the pose contributed to the difficulty, but listen, I think having something other than a front-facing pose is nice. It adds more variety. I think the speed paint is finishing up soon, so I'll show the final art. Here is the final art for Soyeon. Like I said, there are things that I could have done better, but I think this one gave me the biggest challenge, so that's good. Okay, one last roll. Holy hell, 3 5 stars, I thought I made this wheel a lot more difficult, but... Okay, there we go, there's a 3-star. I think that balances everything out. So we're probably wondering what makes a muse a 3-star muse in this. It's obviously going to be the vibes, but one of the major things is that it's a muse that I just created and then didn't do much with. Though there are a few that I put as 3 stars that I actually did do things with, but for those specific ones, I put them there because I needed more 3 stars. Though Steven was a muse I just created one day and didn't do much with. I explained the mortal realm in Yosang's section, so I won't do that again here. Steven's section is the shortest because I spent the least amount of time on his art. He's a 3-star, so he could get away with something simpler. It's been at least 2 years or something since I last did anything with Steven, so my memory on specific details is pretty fuzzy. But what I do remember is that he's a troubled kid. He's a delinquent of sorts. He was someone that liked vandalizing things and just overall got into a lot of bad situations. So I gave him spray paint cans, which will probably make us all raise an eyebrow because, you know, ancient times, but shush, it's magic or something. Because he'd be a playable character, he gets to be one of those humans who get some abilities. So for him, it's obviously going to be being able to create stuff with his spray paint cans. Because of course it is. It's nothing crazy unique, but it fits him. If this was a hypothetical game, he is definitely one of the starter units you can get. Because, you know, you need a couple of characters to function or something. Now, if I seem like I'm being really vague about him, it's because I genuinely don't remember a lot of what I did. Like, I guess when I created him for something, he never really stuck with me. Like, some characters managed to stick with me and I remember stuff more clearly, such as Yosang. Other characters, I just kind of create and then they're there until I remember they exist. But maybe Steven has potential to be developed further. I'll just have to see. Anyways, the speed paint should be ending soon, so I'll show the final art. Here is the final art. Again, it's very basic and plain, but since he's a 3-star character, I wouldn't need to try as hard. So that's it for drawing my muses as gacha game characters. Hope you all enjoyed the video. It was definitely a tough one to make. Maybe I can do this again in the future, seeing as I literally have 140 muses. Anyways, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you can. I hope to see everyone in the next one.